It could be any one of 1,000 schooners out of any Atlantic seaport between 1800 and 1930. But this is January 1964 aboard the Bluenose II on her maiden voyage out of Lunenburg. At the wheel, Captain Angus Walters, skipper of the first Bluenose.
I couldn't wait till the time to get aboard of it. Wherever he did, he wrote me out here when I was a little boy and took me aboard the schooner right from a little boy, 7 years old, and put me aboard there. I was there from there and never left. Just as if I knew nothing else in the world. That was the only thing that was for me to do.
The sea got in your blood and you couldn't get it out.
In the fall of the year, there were thousands of them in the harbors between Bonavista and Cape Ann, salt bankers, most of them, built for dory fishing on the Grand Banks and going foreign. Most of them out of 3 ports, Gloucester and Boston in Massachusetts, and a Bluenose port famed for high winds and rum, Lunenburg, Nova Scotia.
After the ships have been tied up for the winter, and spring comes and everybody gets moving down around the waterfront and they get ready for their first spring trip. That is an exciting time too. You can feel the pulse quicken and the real awakening.
I can remember the smell of the trawl tubs. You know, with the rope coiled and those hooks just going around just so. And this odor of tar. That is really something. When all those trawl tubs were down in the schooners and you'd go down and you can smell this. And can't you remember going in homes where the father and the men sat around with these in the kitchen by the stove?
Briny, deep blue serge. That's what the men wore. That was navy blue serge. Men were married in those and they died in those and they were buried in them. And they walked on Sunday afternoon in them.
And the smell of fish.
Well, that's a good smell. I remember that. I remember that quite clearly. In the summertime, when the salt fishermen came in, well, they used to land that fish with dories, and each fellow would take so many, you know, and they spend the rest of the summer drying. And when the wind was right away, you could smell them all over town.
The family was different, the family that my mother describes. She had 6 brothers and a father who had a schooner of their own. They had their own fish stores, drying stores in front of her home. And her mother looked after the planting on the land. The sisters looked after the men's clothing, saw that everything was mended for these men to go on their own ship with their own father. And it was a family unit.
They never talked much about them times, what they done in their time.
Guess they went through so much that they don't feel like talking about it. I think that's what it is, you know. It was quite an experience too to be on a boat with your brothers and see a dory bottom up and go and pick up the dory and couldn't find the men.
That's the only way them things come out. It's if you got talking to somebody, it'll come along and say, did you have a dirty in such a time, or dirty as another time, how bad was it, all of that, and that's the way the stories comes out. You never come home and tell anybody if you had a narrow escape or if you didn't have it. You don't tell them things, them you forget.
The International Fisherman's Trophy at Halifax in 1920. Old Grand Banks rivals raced again. Lunenburg against Gloucester, Delawana against Esperanto. Tommy Himmelman lost, and Marty Welch hoisted a broom at his masthead. They should never have beaten us, said Angus Walters, and that winter, the Canadians put up the money to build the Bluenose at Lunenburg. They came from all over Nova Scotia to the Smith and Ruland yards to see the launching. It was March 26th, 1921. That fall, she sailed out to the elimination races at Halifax against the fastest schooners in Canada, the Alcala, the Canada, the Independence, the Delawana. She walked away from them all, and went on to race against the American champions. Like a wild horse, said one of her crew. She raced that year against the Elsie. She beat the Elsie and the Ford, the Columbia, the Tebow, the best that Boston and Gloucester could build. She fished and raced for 20 years. She became a legend in her own time. The Columbia was her greatest rival, out of Gloucester, Massachusetts, under Captain Ben Pine. Like many another vessel, she went down with all hands in the hurricane of '27, the August gale. August in Lunenburg, a generation later, and old memories revive as the small schooners gather for the Fishers exhibition. The Gloucestermen come back to renew their friendly rivalry in dory races, trawl setting, filleting, and scallop shucking. And from all across Canada, the exiles come home.
This same tribe of people came over here from Germany, inland Germany. They were farmers, they were peasants, and they, in a short time of necessity, changed their whole way of living.
And became a seafaring people.
In one generation.
My father used to say that Lunenburg hung on a fishhook.
Years ago, they used to go out in boats in little dories. 28 men, I think. 28 men my husband had in charge, you know, under him. He has about 9 dories out with 2 men in. 2 men in a boat and pull and set this trawl and then pull it back. Well, that was dangerous. There used to be a lot of men lost years ago.
It was awful hard work in the dory fishing. You went out, you underrun your trawl in the morning before breakfast. You left the schooner at daylight, and if you had any trouble, you mightn't get back to the schooner again till for 4 or 5 hours. Without any breakfast, that was, I call that hard work. Working with no breakfast.
If you struck a lot of fish, there was no stopping. You might come out Monday morning, you might be there till Thursday. The night time they'd rest fishing, and in the daytime they'd bring them aboard the vessel. It'd take them all night then to clear our decks. By the time the decks was cleared with daylight, and away you go again.
That life is all gone now, lost with 1,000 men and 100 ships. The rest, gone like this silent hulk, hauled up and left to rot in bays along the Bluenose coast, or cut down and sold for Caribbean coasters, like the Bluenose and the Tebow. Spike Spar, Knockabout, lost off Haiti, lost off La Guaira. Only the old men remember.
Power boats is anybody's chance, but when it comes to Roue, that's skill.
There's something about bloody boats in there that can grow on you. Once it bites you, you've had it anyway. But you don't need anybody to pass that along to you. I mean, when you grow up in the boat as a kid, you're on boats all your life. When you go to school, you come after school, you were down in the boats. When you was home in the summertime, you was down climbing around the boats. When you was on the slip, you was out running around. You knew boats from the time you was old enough to crawl.
Well, the Stevenses were real water dogs on my father's side. The water was everything to them. They weren't content unless they had a boat. My father, well, goodness sakes, even today, he can hardly, well, it's hard for him to get around, but he talks about launching his boat and getting another one built. So I don't know, he certainly loved the water and sailing. He was a real sailor, a real keen yachtsman and racer, and that was his life.
I would now like my father to take this golden spike.
January 1963. Victor Oland at the keel-laying ceremony for the second Bluenose.
I'd like to say also, ladies and gentlemen, that isn't it fortunate that this boat is being rebuilt while Bill Roue and Angus Walters are here to witness this very happy occasion.
I don't want to hit you in the head, Angus. You better stand about there. Billy, don't get off that.
Colonel Oland. His firm financed Bluenose too. Bill Roue, designer of the Bluenose, and Angus Walters. In the mold loft of the Lunenburg shipyard, her lines come off. From model to mold. From mold to timber. From timbers to frames. From the keel, the framing rises, rib by rib. The old skills live on in Lunenburg. It is an art to build a vessel, with the shipwright's eye and the adzeman's hand dubbing the frame. Here a little finer, there a bit fuller. She is built to the same dimensions as the original, and of the same materials. Yellow birch, some maple, the keel of oak, knees and ribs of Lunenburg oak, natural bent, double framed, double bolted every yard. Length 143, beam 27, 1510 draft. On the banks, the trawler has replaced the schooner. Only the Portuguese still fish from dories. Captain Dimon is the son of a schooner skipper. He competes with trawlers from Poland, Russia, Germany, and Japan. When it's thick of fog, says his father, it looks like a flower garden on the radar. fishing. He even dreams of it. There's a lot of Lunenburg pride left yet.
A lot of people may think, that fishing, is just a fisherman, but a good beam trawler man is really an expert in his own field. You can go all over town, all over Nova Scotia if you like. You tear up one of them trawls and need somebody to put it back together right. See how many can do it outside of a good beam trawler man. Every section in that trawl has a certain number of meshes. Every section has a certain number of meshes, and if you haven't got that right, somebody's going to beat you catching fish. I think you spend so damn much time at it that it's just after a while it gets to like a man leaving home. He has to come home. Sometimes you don't like the idea of leaving maybe for an hour or two, but once you get back in the routine, it goes the finest kind.
Needless to say, you just got to sea in that blow, is that correct? Over.
DC 3122 back to Lunenburg. Yesterday morning, around daylight there, we got half decent fishing there around the 36, but it was so damn hard we couldn't do anything with it. Everything torn to pieces. But there was a nice bit of fish there, Roue, if you can get them out of it. And they was there yet when we left it, but we just couldn't keep it going over.
3570 up 69 on the purple.
On the set, to hear the men at sea, radio telephone, you can talk to them the same as you can hear on the phone. That is a wonderful thing too, especially when it's a storm. In the morning you turn it on and you do hear the voice, they're all right.
There's a house on this street that was built for a captain, and he didn't come home to live in it.
Oh, I could never look out of the sea after that. I could never go by the sea or look out of the sea. Some days I get up and I think, well, Norman is just out to sea. And I do my work the same as I did when he was gone. Try to get this done and that done because he'll be in tomorrow. Well, that's the way I live. And then when the time comes for him to come in, well, then you see, it just seems like if you... But you can't let yourself give up. You've got to keep going, don't you?
You've got to keep going. That's in the tradition, too. 3 days in port, 10 days at sea. A mug up, a chat, and go to shoot the nets again.
And they were talking, laughing together, and his best friend on the boat, and he went out on the net, and went overboard. They threw him the life belt, but they couldn't save him, and he drowned, and they had to put him in the hole where they iced the fish. See, my husband was a fish icer. His job was in the hole to ice the fish. They put ice around him and bring him in. Well, then after that, when my husband went down to ice fish, it bothered him. But he didn't tell the captain why. If he'd told him why, it bothered him. It bothered him because every time he went in this little hole, well, he thought about this man.
You had to be going to sea all the time, and there was a lot of scared times. A lot of times that wasn't nice.
He had a younger brother, 22, went out in this dory, and they upset the dory, and he was lost. And his mother could see the boat come in, the vessel come in, and saw the vessel come in right by the house where they lived, and saw the flag half-mast, but she didn't know who, till they got in. That was terrible. See those vessels come in with the flag half-mast.
Part of the Bluenose tradition ends here. Many a fisherman's son no longer goes to sea because of the hardship, the long hours away from home. The younger men like to work in the fish plant for better money and a shorter day, and let the Newfoundlanders go to sea. There are other attractions too. The old tradition dies hard.
I started going to sea in 1885. And I went from that till 1939. In 75, I was born, and I started in 85. 10 years old, and went down fishing in a schooner called the Tyrone.
In the spring of '63, while the Bluenose 2 was building, the Teresa Connor under Captain Harry Oxner was preparing for her first spring trip with 5 or 6 men, the old reliables. Already cut down, short-rigged and under engine, she sailed for Newfoundland to look for men. Lunenburgers wouldn't go crew. Dory fishing is finished, they said. It turned out to be the last of the salt banking trips. Not even Newfoundland men would go in a dory. They are all gone now, the last of the salt bankers, the ships that sailed with the Bluenose.
And looking out my bedroom window, it was just a forest of spars and sails, and then after a while it just got to be when you looked out the window you saw 1 or 2. I can remember that, and I can remember the Bluenose anchored off this house. Oh, I'm glad that they're building it.
What was it about the Bluenose that was so special?
A ship? A vessel, as they say here? To me, she's a thing. Well, you might say she's not flesh and blood, but she has a life.
She was a good sailor. She used to do things that no other ship ever done. Naturally, when a ship raises up in the sea and she falls down, she'd fall off. But whatever made the Bluenose do it, I can't tell you. But every time she fell down the sea, she cut the wind. It'd move against the wind. As she fell down, she'd cut into it. And that's why she was always winded of a mark. Dad, I used to watch that lots of times up the masthead. You could actually see her cutting. And that cut, if you wasn't watching yourself up there, she'd throw you off that masthead pretty quick. I was up there one time, we cracked the topmast. It didn't take me very long to get on deck. There were some stays coming down around my neck. The topmast came out of her. The rougher it got, the faster she went. You see, the further she got over on her side, the faster she went. But she was a good old ship. God knows if this new one will sail like her or not, I can't tell you. I was down looking at it today. There's something there don't look right. Around that bow. It don't just look like the old one to me. And I scraped and scrubbed that bottom with that old Bluenose off and up to know what she looked like.
July 24th, '63, the day of the launching.
They that go down to the seas in ships and do business in great waters, they see the works of the Lord and his wonders in the deep. Let us pray. O thou who sittest above the water floods, and stillest the raging of the sea, accept, we beseech thee, the supplication of thy servants for all who in this ship, now and hereafter, shall commit their lives unto the perils of the deep. Watch over them in their going forth and their coming in, that no evil befall them, and through all the changes and chances of this mortal life, bring them to thy mercy, to thy sure haven, and thy everlasting life. Amen.
Mrs. Olin will now christen the ship.
Take this ship, and all who sailing her, I christen thee, Bluenose 2. Oh, wait a minute.
proud ship that served her people well. Well, the Bluenose was her name, and she never lost a race, and she won herself a place in the history of Canada. Blow, winds blow, for the Bluenose is sailing once again. So beat to the windward once more, and up jib and foresail as before, for your country will be proud once again of the ship and the men who sailed her smartly into victory. Blow, winds blow, for the Bluenose is sailing once again.
We left here one day in the Bluenose, and there were some more schooners going to Halifax at the same time. And the wind was north, and it blowed like the old devil. We went down through Pennet Point Run. We went inside of Sambra Island. Why? I had to take charge, you see, in the Bluenose, and a gale of wind, and she lay in all rail under. And if we ever would have took a bottom at all, there would have been no bottom left, because I know she was going, if she was going a bit at all, she was going 11.5 or perhaps 12. Smooth water, and all the wind that she could carry. Lord, was she ever tearing, boys. After we went down to the ledges, Angus woke up, and he come up. And she would go, you know, that the rail would go all under. And Angus, he would say, "Don't let her come up, Nish, don't let her come up."
Built in a Nova Scotia town, where the shipwrights have gained world renown. Down in Lunenburg they built a living legend out of skill, sweat and pride, and sailed her masterfully till she died. Blow, winds blow, for the Bluenose is sailing once again. So beat to the windward once more, and up jib and foresail as before, for your country will be proud once again of the ship and the men who sailed her smartly into victory. Blow, winds blow, for the Bluenose is sailing once again. For the Bluenose is sailing once again. For the Bluenose is sailing once again.